All right, welcome to another deep dive. This time we're going to be looking at this article called Transform Your Life Instantly with these 10 Buddhist teachings.
Oh, wow. Ambitious.
A little clickbaity, don't you think? But hey, who knows? Maybe we'll find some real gems in here, right? Some actual advice we can use, to navigate being human.
Yeah. I mean, Buddhism does offer some pretty practical wisdom on dealing with life's ups and downs. So um, let's see what this article has to offer.
Okay, so the very first teaching they highlight is this idea of obstacles as opportunities. It reminds me of that, that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But I'm guessing there's a bit more to it than that, right?
Oh, definitely. It's not just about surviving, tough times, but about actually using them as fuel for growth, for, personal development. The article uses this image of the strongest trees growing against the harshest winds. It's that resistance, that pushing back against difficulty that builds strength.
Okay, I can see how that applies to, physical challenges, training for a marathon or something. But what about when it comes to more mental or emotional obstacles, like, say, dealing with a difficult coworker or having a personal setback?
Yeah, that's where it gets really interesting. Think of those situations as like mental weight training. Each time you encounter a difficult person, instead of letting it get to you, drain you, you're practicing patience, compassion, right?
Yeah.
Every setback, every time something doesn't go your way, it becomes a chance to look at, how you're approaching things and maybe get creative, find new solutions.
So it's all about building resilience, not just getting through it, but coming out the other side, more capable.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like those trees, they don't just withstand the wind, they actually grow stronger because of it.
Wow, that's a pretty solid place to start, I think.
Oh.
What's the next teaching this article highlights?
Well, it shifts to something I think we all struggle with, getting caught up in the past or, worrying about the future. This teaching focuses on the power of being present, living in the here and now.
I am terrible at that. My mind is constantly replaying awkward moments or worrying about deadlines. It's exhausting. Is there actually a way to, shut off that mental noise? I mean, does Buddhism really offer that?
Well, it's not really about shutting it off completely, but more about learning to just observe it, without getting swept away. The article reminds us that every moment spent thinking about what was or what if is a moment you're not actually, experiencing life as it happens.
I feel like there's an app for that, right? Some mindfulness meditation thing that promises to fix my wandering mind.
Yeah, there are definitely tools that can help, and we'll get into those a bit later. But the real core of this teaching is about just cultivating awareness, noticing when your mind drifts off to worries or, ruminating on things, and then gently bringing it back to the present moment. It's like, training a puppy. It takes patience and repetition.
So instead of beating myself up for not being a Zen master on day one, I should just focus on noticing those thoughts and gently redirecting my attention.
Yeah, exactly. It's a practice, not, a perfection contest. And even small moments of presence can make a big difference. Think about savoring a cup of coffee, really paying attention to the taste and aroma instead of, just gulping it down while scrolling on your phone.
Right, okay, I can get behind that. It's about bringing that mindfulness to even the small things throughout the day. So what's next? What's the next teaching? I'm ready to level up my emotional game.
All right, well, this next one speaks directly to that. It focuses on developing emotional resilience. The idea being that suffering doesn't come from events themselves, but from our reactions to them.
So it's not about avoiding tough situations, but changing how we respond to them. That's easier said than done, right?
It does take practice, but there's a helpful analogy. Think of your emotions like clouds, passing through the sky. They come and go, they change shape. Instead of getting caught up in the storm of each emotion, try to just observe them, without judgment. Recognize their temporary nature.
So instead of freaking out when something bad happens, I take a step back, acknowledge the emotion, and just let it pass.
Exactly. It's about learning to ride the waves of your emotions without getting swept away.
All right, okay, so it's less about being stoic and emotionless and more about not letting those feelings completely derail me. I can work with that. What's next on this Buddhist wisdom train?
Well, this next one might seem a bit tougher. It's about the importance of self-discipline.
Ugh, discipline. It always gets such a bad rap. It's all about restriction and, deprivation. I have to give up everything fun to reach, like enlightenment or something.
Right, exactly. But that's not what this is about. It's about reframing discipline as a path to freedom, a way to become the master of your own mind, rather than a slave to your impulses.
Okay, now that's interesting. I usually think of discipline as something, imposed from the outside. But you're saying it's a way to gain more control, more agency.
Exactly. The article says that every great achievement, whether it's in spirituality, art, even personal growth, is built on that foundation of discipline. Think about it. When you lack discipline, you're constantly at the mercy of distractions, procrastination, just instant gratification.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. If I'm always giving in to every craving or distraction, I'm never going to get anything done, nothing important. So how do we actually cultivate that self-discipline? It sounds kind of daunting.
It starts with small, consistent actions, like choosing to meditate, even for just 5 minutes each morning, even when you don't feel like it. Sticking to your workout schedule, even when you'd rather just veg out on the couch. It's about building these, small habits that over time strengthen your willpower and help you align your actions with your values.
So like building a muscle, the more you work it, the stronger it gets. But instead of biceps, we're talking about willpower and self-control.
Exactly. And like any training, it's important to start small, be patient with yourself. You don't go from, couch potato to marathon runner overnight.
Okay, I like that approach. Small steps, big impact. What's next on our list here?
This one is super relevant today. It's about releasing the need for approval from others.
Ooh, yeah. That's a big one. I think we all struggle with that to some extent. And social media definitely doesn't help.
Definitely not. And this article is pretty blunt about it, actually. It calls seeking external validation a mirage, an illusion.
Because people's opinions are constantly changing, right? And you can't please everyone all the time.
Exactly. And even when you do get that validation, it's fleeting, it's superficial. It doesn't address that deeper need for self-worth.
So what's the alternative then? If we're not looking for approval from outside ourselves, where do we find it?
The article emphasizes the importance of cultivating, inner self-worth. It's about recognizing your inherent value as a human being, regardless of what anyone else thinks or says.
So shifting from external validation to internal validation. But how do we actually do that? I mean, it feels like we're, conditioned from a young age to seek approval from others.
It's definitely a process, yeah. And it starts with becoming aware of those moments when you are seeking validation. Ask yourself, what am I hoping to get from this? What am I afraid of?
So understanding the root of that need, rather than just trying to suppress it.
Exactly. And once you start to see those underlying fears and insecurities, you can start to address them with compassion and understanding.
This is making me think about self-love and self-acceptance. Like, if we can really love and accept ourselves, flaws and all, wouldn't that make us less needy for approval from others?
Absolutely. When we can give ourselves that unconditional love and acceptance that we're often seeking from others, we become, less dependent on that external validation.
Wow, that's powerful. It's like we're shifting the source of validation from the outside in, from other people's opinions to our own inner knowing.
Exactly. And that's where real freedom lies. When your sense of worth is rooted in your own, heart and mind, it's not dependent on the ever-changing whims of the external world.
Okay, this is already giving me a lot to think about, so what's next? What else do we have on the agenda?
Well, let's talk about something particularly relevant in our, fast-paced, always connected world. It's about building mental strength.
Oh, yeah, especially with all the distractions and negativity online. Sometimes it feels like my brain is on overdrive.
It's no wonder so many people feel mentally exhausted. The article actually describes the mind as a muscle that needs regular training to stay strong. A weak mind is easily swayed by external circumstances, while a strong mind remains calm even when things are chaotic.
Okay, so how do we strengthen those mental muscles? Is it like mental push-ups or something?
Not exactly. But the idea is that we need to be intentional about training our minds. And practices like meditation and mindfulness play a huge role here. They help us develop the ability to just, observe our thoughts and emotions without getting swept away.
So it's like developing an inner observer that can witness our mental activity without judgment. That seems incredibly useful, but also really challenging.
It does take practice. The article uses this powerful image. It says, if your mind is a garden and negative thoughts are weeds, if you leave them unchecked, they just, they overrun everything.
Ooh, that's a great visual. So mental training is about like weeding out the negative thoughts, and cultivating a more peaceful inner world.
Exactly. It's about choosing which thoughts to engage with, rather than letting them control you.
This is making me realize how much work I have to do on my mental garden. But it's also exciting to think about, creating a more peaceful, more resilient inner world. So what's next on our exploration?
Okay, this one might be a bit of a mind bender. It's about understanding and embracing impermanence.
Impermanence, as in like nothing lasts forever. Isn't that a little depressing? Why would we want to focus on that?
It might seem counterintuitive, but the article actually suggests that embracing impermanence can lead to greater peace and an appreciation for life.
Okay, I'm intrigued, but also a little skeptical. How does that work? If I'm constantly aware that everything's going to end, wouldn't that make me, I don't know, nihilistic?
That's a common misconception, yeah. The idea isn't to dwell on the eventual end of things, but to recognize that it's clinging to things as if they'll last forever that creates suffering. When we accept that everything is in constant flux, then we can savor the present moment more fully.
Because we know it won't last forever, so we cherish it while we have it. That's a beautiful way to look at it.
Exactly. It's like watching a breathtaking sunset. Knowing it's fleeting makes the experience all the more special.
Yeah, instead of fearing change, we learn to flow with it. Okay, I can see how that could be incredibly liberating, but it also feels like a pretty big mental shift.
It is. But even just starting to think about this concept, to notice that constant change happening all around us, that can begin to shift your perspective.
This deep dive is already giving me a lot to chew on. Okay, so what's the next teaching? Does it build on this idea of impermanence?
It absolutely does. It focuses on letting go of attachment.
Okay, so if impermanence is about accepting that nothing lasts forever, attachment is about our tendency to cling to things despite that reality.
Exactly. Buddhism teaches that attachment, whether it's to possessions, people, or even ideas, is a major source of suffering. Clinging creates fear, anxiety, and ultimately, pain, because we're constantly worried about losing what we're attached to.
And since we know everything's impermanent, loss is inevitable. So letting go is about releasing that grip on things, people, and ideas that we think we need to be happy.
Precisely. It doesn't mean we stop caring, stop loving, but we can experience those things in a more pure and unconditional way.
Because then our happiness isn't dependent on these external factors that are beyond our control.
Exactly. The article puts it beautifully. Love, when free from attachment, becomes pure and unconditional. Enjoyment, when free from clinging, becomes effortless and joyful.
Wow, that's powerful. It's like letting go of a heavy weight and finally being able to breathe again. I'm noticing a theme here. Letting go of the things that weigh us down create unnecessary suffering.
You're picking up on a key element of Buddhist philosophy there, and that leads us perfectly to our next teaching, which might seem a bit simpler but is equally profound. It's about practicing gratitude.
Gratitude. It feels like that's become a bit of a buzzword lately. Is there something unique that Buddhism brings to this?
Oh, absolutely. Buddhism emphasizes gratitude not just as a fleeting emotion, but as a way of being. It's about actively shifting your focus from what you lack to what you already have.
So instead of dwelling on what we don't have, we're appreciating what's present in our lives right now.
Exactly. Training our minds to recognize those countless blessings that surround us every day,
Yeah.
even the seemingly small or ordinary things.
So instead of focusing on, being stuck in traffic, I could be grateful that I have a car, music to listen to, a destination to get to.
Exactly. It's about choosing to focus on that abundance that's already present, even amidst challenges or inconveniences.
I can see how that shift in perspective could be like a game changer in how we experience daily life. Okay, so what's the final teaching? Is this the grand finale, the key to unlocking lasting happiness?
Well, it's definitely a powerful one. It ties everything together beautifully. It's all about prioritizing inner peace above all else.
Inner peace. It sounds so idyllic, yet so elusive in our modern world. I mean, is it even attainable?
That's a question many of us grapple with, right?
Right.
We live in a culture that prioritizes, achievements, possessions, the constant pursuit of more. But Buddhism reminds us that true, lasting peace, it comes from within, not from external circumstances.
So it's not about escaping the world or avoiding challenges, but about cultivating a sense of inner stillness that can weather any storm. But how do we actually achieve that? I mean, everywhere I turn, there's something trying to steal my attention, disrupt my peace.
You're absolutely right. It is a constant practice. But the article points to some key tools that can help. Practices like meditation and mindfulness are incredibly valuable for cultivating that inner peace. They help us learn to quiet that mental chatter and find that calm center within.
It sounds like a lot of work, but I'm really intrigued by this idea of developing that inner strength, that ability to remain calm and centered even when life feels chaotic.
It's a journey, not a destination. But even small steps in the right direction can make a huge difference.
This deep dive is already blowing my mind. I'm starting to see how all these teachings connect and how they can support us in living a more peaceful, more fulfilling life. So, where do we go from here?
Well, I think it's time to dig a little deeper into each of these teachings and really explore how we can apply them to our daily lives.
I'm ready to level up my wisdom. We'll be back for part 2 of this deep dive to do just that. All right, welcome back. We're continuing our deep dive into these 10 Buddhist teachings that promise to transform your life.
Yeah, we covered a lot in part 1, but I'm really excited to dig a little deeper into some of these ideas and see how we can actually put them into practice, make them real.
Me too. I gotta admit, some of it sounded a bit abstract at first, but now I'm really starting to see how these teachings could be super helpful, just in dealing with the everyday challenges of being human.
Yeah, exactly. I think Buddhism often gets seen as this really esoteric, otherworldly thing, but really at its core, it's about understanding the human mind, and finding ways to live a more peaceful and fulfilling life.
Okay, so where should we start? What teaching are we going to tackle first this time around?
Let's go back to that idea of obstacles as opportunities, which we talked about in part 1. You made a great point about how it's one thing to understand the concept intellectually, but it's another thing entirely to actually apply it when you're in the thick of it, when you're facing a challenge.
Yeah, totally. It's easy to say, oh, this is just an opportunity for growth when you're feeling calm and collected. But what about when you're stressed out, overwhelmed, frustrated? How do we actually make that mental shift in those moments?
It's definitely a practice. It takes time, it takes patience. But one thing that I think can be really helpful is remembering that you're not alone in this. Everyone faces obstacles. It's part of being human.
That's a good point. It's easy to feel like we're the only ones struggling, but everyone has their own battles they're fighting, their own mountains to climb.
Exactly. And when we remember that, it can help us to, cultivate compassion, not just for others, but for ourselves too. Instead of getting caught in that why me mentality, we can start to see those challenges as a shared experience, something that, connects us to the rest of humanity.
Okay. Yeah, I can see how that shift in perspective could be really helpful. So how does that tie back to, embracing obstacles?
Well, when we recognize that challenges are just a part of life for everyone, we can start to see them less as personal attacks or punishments and more as opportunities to develop, resilience, wisdom, compassion. It's like we're all in this together, learning and growing from our experiences.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like reframing failure. Instead of seeing it as a sign that you're not good enough, you can see it as feedback, a chance to learn and improve.
Exactly. And that can be so empowering. Instead of feeling defeated by setbacks, you can use them as fuel to move forward.
This makes me think about that teaching on living in the present moment, which we talked about in part 1.
Yeah.
Is there a connection between those two ideas?
Oh, absolutely. When we're fully present, we're less likely to get caught up in the stories we tell ourselves about our challenges. We're not, dwelling on past mistakes or worrying about what might happen in the future. We're just dealing with what's right in front of us.
So instead of getting lost in that spiral of anxiety, regret, self-pity, we can stay grounded in the present moment and focus on taking action.
Precisely. And that can make a huge difference in how we navigate tough situations. When we're present, we're more likely to be able to access our inner resources, our creativity, our ability to problem solve.
It's like we're clearing out the mental clutter so we can see things more clearly and respond more effectively. Okay, I'm really starting to see how all these teachings kind of work together to create a more resilient and fulfilling life. What other gems can we unearth from this article?
Well, let's dive into that concept of self-discipline. The article really emphasizes that as being, key for achieving meaningful goals. I know you mentioned in part 1 that you're maybe struggling with that one a little bit.
Yeah, I'll admit the word discipline still kind of makes me cringe a little. It just brings up all these images of, strict rules, deprivation, and sucking all the joy out of life.
Yeah, I hear you. Discipline definitely gets a bad rap. But remember, the article, it frames discipline not as punishment, but as a path to freedom.
Okay, remind me how that works again. How does discipline equal freedom? It seems so counterintuitive.
Think about it this way. When we lack discipline, we're at the mercy of, our impulses, our desires. We procrastinate, we overindulge, we get distracted by every little thing. We're not really in control of our lives.
Okay, yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I can't tell you how many hours I've wasted, scrolling through social media when I should have been working or spending time with people I care about.
Right. But with self-discipline, we develop that ability to choose our actions consciously based on our values and goals,
Mhm.
not just reacting to, to every whim or temptation that comes along. It's about aligning our actions with our intentions, even when it's not, the easier, fun thing to do in that moment.
So it's not about like denying yourself pleasure or joy, but about making choices that support, your long-term well-being and happiness.
Exactly. And it's that alignment between our actions and our values that creates that sense of freedom, that sense of empowerment. We're not slaves to our impulses anymore. We're the masters of our own destiny, so to speak.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense now. It's like like you said before, we're training our willpower muscle. The more we practice making those conscious choices, the easier it becomes.
Precisely. And like with any training, be patient with yourself. Start small. You don't go from, never exercising to running a marathon overnight.
This reminds me of that teaching on building mental strength. Are those two, are they connected?
Absolutely. Self-discipline is, it's a key component of mental strength. When you have strong mental discipline, you're able to resist distractions, stay focused on your goals, and, you can bounce back from setbacks more easily.
So it's like self-discipline, it lays the foundation for mental resilience and for inner peace, right? It allows us to weather those storms without getting, totally knocked down.
Exactly. It gives you the power to create the life that you want instead of just, reacting to whatever happens.
Okay, so we've talked about embracing obstacles, being present, developing self-discipline. What other wisdom can we extract from these teachings? I'm ready for more.
Well, let's talk about letting go of the need for approval from others. This can be, incredibly liberating, incredibly empowering.
Yeah, I think that's a huge one for a lot of people, especially nowadays with, social media and everything. It's like we're constantly bombarded with images of perfection and success.
Yeah, it's so easy to get caught up in, comparing ourselves to others and seeking validation from external sources, especially online.
And that can lead to this never-ending cycle of feeling, inadequate, like you're never good enough. No matter how many likes or followers you have, there's always someone who seems to be doing better or looking better or having more fun than you.
Exactly. The article actually calls it a mirage, an illusion, because true happiness and fulfillment, they come from within, not from what other people think about you.
Okay, but how do we actually break free from that need for approval? It feels so ingrained in our culture, like we're programmed from a young age to seek validation from others.
Yeah, it is a deeply ingrained pattern for a lot of us. But I think the first step is just becoming aware of it. Notice those moments when you're seeking validation and ask yourself, why? What am I hoping to get from this? What am I afraid of?
So understanding the root of that need rather than just trying to pretend it doesn't exist.
Exactly. And once you start to understand those underlying fears and insecurities, you can start to, address them with compassion and understanding.
This is making me think about self-love and self-acceptance. If we can learn to truly love and accept ourselves, flaws and all, wouldn't that naturally make us less needy for approval from other people?
Absolutely. When we can offer ourselves that unconditional love and acceptance that we're often seeking from others, we become less dependent on that external validation.
Yeah, that's a powerful idea. It's like shifting the source of validation, from the outside to the inside, from other people's opinions to our own inner knowing.
Exactly. And that's where true freedom lies, when your sense of worth is rooted in your own, heart and mind. It's not dependent on the ever-changing whims of the external world.
Wow, this is really shifting my perspective. I'm starting to see how all these teachings are interconnected and how they can support us in living a more peaceful and authentic life.
That's the beauty of these teachings. They offer a really holistic framework for understanding the human experience and for finding true and lasting happiness.
This deep dive has been so eye-opening. I'm feeling really inspired to keep exploring these ideas.
That's great to hear. We still have a few more teachings to explore, so let's take a break here and we'll come back for part 3.
All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We're in the home stretch now. Feels like we're almost to the top of this mountain of Buddhist wisdom.
Yeah, we've definitely covered a lot of ground, from embracing those obstacles to self-discipline, letting go of that need for approval. It's been quite a journey.
I'm ready for that final push. In the last part, we left off talking about letting go of attachment, especially that need for external validation. It really made me realize how much energy I waste, trying to fit into some imaginary mold of what other people expect.
It's exhausting, isn't it? That constant striving for approval. It can really keep us from truly living our lives. But as we were talking about, that path to liberation lies in shifting our focus inward, right? Cultivating self-acceptance, recognizing that inherent worth that we all have.
So where do we go from here? What other teachings are waiting for us in this article?
Well, there's one we touched on briefly in part 1 that I'd like to explore a bit deeper. It's impermanence. I know it can feel kind of, intimidating, even a little depressing at first, but it really holds a key to a profound shift in perspective.
Yeah, I remember feeling a little apprehensive about that one. It's easy to get caught up in the idea that, well, if nothing lasts forever, then what's the point? But you were saying that understanding impermanence could actually lead to like a deeper appreciation for life.
Exactly. It's a bit paradoxical, but by acknowledging that everything is in constant flux, that nothing stays the same, we can actually savor the present moment more fully.
Because we know it won't last forever, so we cherish it while we can. Yeah, okay, that's starting to make more sense. But how do we move beyond just the intellectual understanding of impermanence and actually embody it, in our lives?
It's a practice, just like anything else. One way to start is by simply noticing that constant change happening all around us. Observe the seasons changing, the weather patterns, the way your own body and mind are in constant flux.
So it's about cultivating awareness of that transient nature of everything, right? From the big cycles of nature down to our own, fleeting thoughts and emotions.
Precisely. And as we become more attuned to that constant change, something interesting happens.
Yeah.
We start to release our grip on that illusion of permanence. The idea that things should stay the same.
Instead of resisting change, we learn to flow with it.
Yeah, I can see how that could be incredibly liberating, especially in a world that often feels so chaotic and unpredictable.
It is. It allows us to ride the waves of life with more grace, more ease, knowing that everything's in motion, nothing is truly fixed or permanent.
Like surfing. You can't control the waves, but you can learn to ride them. This is making me think about that teaching on letting go of attachment. Are those two concepts, are they connected?
Oh, absolutely. Understanding impermanence is essential for truly letting go of attachment.
Yeah.
When we cling to things, to people, to ideas as if they're permanent, we set ourselves up for disappointment and suffering.
Because inevitably things will change. People will come and go, our ideas will evolve. Holding on too tightly just creates tension and pain.
Yep.
Exactly. But when we recognize that everything is impermanent, then we could begin to loosen our grip, to hold things more lightly.
It doesn't mean we stop caring or stop loving, right? It's not about becoming detached or indifferent.
Not at all. It's about shifting from a grasping, clinging kind of love to a more spacious, allowing kind of love.
So we can still, love deeply, but without needing to possess or control. That's a really beautiful way to think about it.
And it brings us to a practice that can be so supportive in cultivating this non-attached kind of love, gratitude.
Gratitude. I gotta say, that word sometimes feels a little, overused. A bit cliche, maybe.
I understand. It's become a bit of a buzzword lately.
Yeah.
But Buddhism offers a really unique perspective on gratitude.
Yep.
It emphasizes it not just as a fleeting emotion, but as a way of being.
So it's not just about saying thank you or writing in a gratitude journal, but about cultivating a deeper appreciation for all the gifts that are already present in our lives.
Exactly. Actively shifting that focus from what we lack to what we already have. Instead of dwelling on what's missing or what we wish was different, we can choose to appreciate the abundance that already surrounds us.
Even the simple things like having a roof over our heads, clean water to drink, people who love us.
Precisely. It's about training our minds to recognize those countless blessings that we often take for granted.
Okay, I can see how gratitude can be such a powerful antidote to that feeling of lack, that dissatisfaction we so often get caught up in.
It is. And the more we practice gratitude, the more we realize that true abundance isn't about having more, but about appreciating what we already have.
So we've explored impermanence, letting go of attachment, cultivating gratitude. What's the final teaching this article offers, the grand finale?
It's a beautiful one, and it ties everything together perfectly. It's about prioritizing inner peace above all else.
Inner peace, something we all, I think, long for, but often feels so elusive, especially in today's world. I mean, is it even possible to find true inner peace amidst all the chaos, all the noise?
It is, but it requires a conscious shift in perspective
Hmm.
and a commitment to cultivating practices that support inner peace.
So it's not something that just, happens to us. It's something we have to actively work towards.
Exactly. And the first step is recognizing that lasting peace. It doesn't come from external circumstances.
Yeah.
It's not something we can buy or achieve or acquire. It's an inner state of being.
So it's not about, escaping the world, avoiding challenges, but about cultivating that sense of inner stillness that can weather any storm. But how do we actually develop that? I mean, everywhere I turn, there's, something vying for my attention, trying to pull me out of the present moment.
You're right. It's a constant practice. But there's some really powerful tools that can help us cultivate that inner peace. Things like meditation and mindfulness are so valuable for learning to quiet that mental chatter and connect with that calm, centered place within ourselves.
It sounds like it takes time. It takes patience to develop those skills.
It does. But even, just a few minutes of daily practice can make a world of difference. It's like training a muscle. The more we exercise that inner peace muscle, the stronger it becomes.
This deep dive it's been truly eye-opening. Feels like we've climbed to the top of this mountain of Buddhist wisdom, and now we have this incredible view.
It was been a pleasure exploring these teachings with you. And remember, the journey doesn't end here. These teachings, they're meant to be lived, to be integrated into our everyday lives.
So what's one thing our listeners can take away from this deep dive? What's one action they can take, today to start embodying these teachings?
Think about that concept of impermanence. What's one thing you can let go of today that's no longer serving you? Could be a grudge, a worry, a limiting belief, a material possession, even just a thought pattern.
That's a great question to ponder. Letting go can be challenging, but it can also be so incredibly liberating.
It is. And remember, even the smallest act of letting go, it creates space for new possibilities, for new growth, and a deeper sense of inner peace.
This has been an incredibly inspiring and insightful conversation. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. And we'll see you next time for another exploration of wisdom and practical tools for living a more fulfilling life.